Hey, Larken Rose here. I shall be speaking at Anarchapulco a week from now. I don't actually know the schedule or know what day I'm speaking, but it's February 11th through 16th at the Secret Garden in Acapulco. Yes, they got absolutely trounced by a massive hurricane, but they're doing it there and they rebuilt and it's happening again in the same place. It survived enough for them to do that. My talk there is titled, let's see if I can get my own title right, When Humanity Grows Up. And there's a lot of subjects that sort of relate to that, but I don't want to give that talk on YouTube and then remove any reason for anybody to come to the talk because they could just watch it on YouTube. But there are so many things that relate to that. In this case, I wanted to talk about something that somebody brought up in a comment under the last video I posted. He basically said, I'm going to paraphrase as best I can, that ending government and political power and the ruling class is not going to serve everybody. It's not going to make everybody happy. It's not going to make everybody's lives easier. There are a lot of people whose lives will get much harder. Now, he wasn't arguing in favor of government. He recognizes that government's a big immoral monstrosity. He was just kind of describing that, yeah, lots of people will do better without a giant ruling class, but lots of people will do worse. And I think he's partly wrong and partly right. And so I thought I'd do a short video ranting about it. Short term, if government just fell off the face of the earth, and that's not even the thing. If people stop believing in the divine right of politicians, they stop believing in authority overnight, which obviously isn't going to happen. And so the giant extortion monstrosity just disappeared, and all the money that flows through the parasite classes around the world and flows to other people, whether you're talking about military people or people on welfare, which are the same thing. It's just one does violent stuff in between getting stolen loot. That would end, and those people wouldn't be getting money. Now, my short explanation of why I think the guy who made that comment is wrong and right at the same time, I think in the short term, a lot of people would be confused and desperate and not sure what to do because they've become so dependent on a giant thieving ruling class. This would include beneficiaries of all sorts of government handouts. It would also include everybody who works for government who is doing things that in a free society there'd be no need to do. Now, a lot of people are in government doing things that would still need to be done, only actually efficiently and productively, in a free society, and that could pretty easily and quickly just shift over to, the private sector version of how lots of things are done. Air traffic control. People who own planes still aren't going to want them to crash into each other. So they're still going to want there to be an organized air traffic control system that makes sure they're not crashing into each other. Also, I'm pretty sure the passengers, as well as the pilots, also don't want to die in a fiery ball of death. So actually legitimate functions that right now the government does, it would be really easy for those same people to do it in a private setting in most cases. Now, short term, a lot of people would be shit out of luck if the government just disappeared. But I think long term is where the guy who made that comment is actually wrong. I think the vast majority of humanity would hugely benefit from the lack of a ruling class in the long term. And it's important to realize and understand how much the existence of government trains people to be immature and useless and unproductive and ignorant and a whole bunch of other things that they wouldn't be if there wasn't a government there training them to do that. For example, there's a ton of people on welfare who they just think, oh, we get our government check and then we just go about our lives producing nothing of any value for anybody. And if that check disappears, whether you're talking about like Social Security, which is just, oh, we ran a Ponzi scheme and now we're giving money to buy the loyalty of old people, or welfare or food stamps of now we're using money to buy the loyalty of younger people or people of a fairly huge age range. And those people, if they've been stuck in the mentality of, oh, I need it, so I'm entitled to it, yeah, it's going to be a rough ride for them. The thing is, that mentality is not just inherent to humanity. It's not something that just happens in a free society. Government is training people to be that way. And the absence of government would very quickly be a kick in the pants for a lot of those people who would suddenly realize, well, now, since I don't have anybody to whine to about what I'm entitled to just by merely existing, maybe I have to figure out like how to be productive and get a job, even just like a part-time, do a little bit of work somewhere so I can feed myself. So the reality of a free society would very quickly throw a bunch of those economic parasites, and I mean that not just as a general insult, but as an actual description. People who are contributing absolutely nothing to society, but they're receiving huge amounts of buying power from a giant authoritarian ruling class, robbing productive people to give it to them. Now, there are some people who are sort of, at least to a large degree, stuck being parasites because they can't, sometimes through no fault of their own, they're incapable. Like if somebody's on bed rest or in a coma or something, that person's going to be an economic parasite because they're not going to be productive. It's not an insult. And in that case, it's something that it's not their fault. It's not like, you have a bad attitude, Mr. Guy in a coma. It's just they can't help it. And if somebody's like a quadriplegic, obviously that limits what they can do. They can still be productive in certain ways. But so when I say a parasite, I don't mean like exterminate them all. And I don't even mean it as an insult as much as just a description. But the people who are parasites just because they have the opportunity to get free stuff in a stateless society would very quickly learn, oh, people don't want to give me that. When it comes to people in comas or people who are, homeless through no fault of their own, well, I've talked before about why homelessness exists, only because of government. But when people are down on their luck, not because they're just lazy wastes of space, but because they, whatever problems came up, lots and lots of other people are already willing to help them voluntarily. And even after the trillions of dollars in robbery that happens in the U.S. every year, billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of private charity happens of people saying, well, I want to help people out. Like if they're down on their luck for whatever reason, or there was a flood or something and it messed up this whole town, we want to help people out who we think are like in need of help and deserving of help. But if someone goes, well, I want free stuff so I can sit around playing video games on my fat ass all day, most people are going to go, no. Like, why would I voluntarily work hard and give that to you just so you can be worthless? Screw you. Get off your ass and do something useless. I mean, useful. They already are doing something useless. And so that natural dynamic of people want to help people who deserve help, and they don't want to help people who don't deserve help, that is the defining factor of why government is so destructive, because it literally rewards people for being useless. And like I've talked about before, and lots of other people have talked about, it removes everything good about actual generosity and charity. Because if you have somebody down on their luck through no fault of their own, and other people are like, hey, let's collect up some money and help them out, and they do it, the people who chose to give can feel good about, yeah, we helped that person out, or we helped that family out, or whatever. We didn't have to, we weren't forced to, but we chose to, and it feels good to help somebody who seems deserving of help and, help them get them back on their feet. And the recipients are like, wow, none of those people had to do that. They voluntarily helped us out. I feel so grateful, and I hope to get back on my feet so they don't need to do that. But in the meantime, that's so awesome that they did that. Everybody can feel good about it till government comes along and says, hey, evil rich, we're going to rob you to give to this person who either can't take care of themselves or just isn't taking care of themselves because they're lazy, so that they feel entitled to it, and you feel bitter about it because you didn't have a choice. You weren't being generous. You were just being robbed. There's a difference. And so the dynamic that government welfare creates bitterness and division and an entitlement mentality. And the people who are subject to that, yeah, if government disappeared tomorrow, they're kind of screwed. Because they're going to learn the hard way, oh yeah, those people working their asses off to pay their bills and feed their families, they don't really want to feed your family if you're just sitting on your ass for no good reason. Just because someone's paying you to be lazy. You're going to frickin' learn how to be of use to somebody else, or your life's going to suck. And that's the reality of a stateless society, and it's a reality that most people need to learn. Well, not most people. Most people are productive in one way or another. So short term, those people are doomed, but long term, those people wouldn't exist. Because in a stateless society, there is no dynamic training people to be lazy parasites. There's still the thing of, oh, bad things might happen, like this person got paralyzed or something. So, and like they lost their job, which required them to be able to walk. So other people are going to help them out, and they have to like figure out what to do and all that stuff. Those dynamics will still be there. But you'll get actually caring, generous people helping out people actually in need, unlike the welfare state. And the same is true in so many different ways where government trains people to be ignorant and useless and all that other stuff and buys their dependency, which is like the most evil thing you could do to human beings, is make them incapable of taking care of themselves so they have to beg to you. That's just horrible and despicable, and government specializes in that. But in a lot of ways, not just financial, government trains people to be unthinking doofuses. And I have to tie this in with the fact that a lot of people, including pro-freedom people, come out and declare that people don't want to be free. They don't want to think for themselves. They don't want to be responsible. To a certain degree, that's true, because there is the weight and the trouble that responsibility brings. Like, what you choose to do, that's on you. You can't just whine to authority to save the day. But keep in mind how much government, it isn't just human nature, it's government training people to think that way. I mean, just directly. I mean, like kids in school, like some bully is picking on somebody else. What does almost every authority figure say about that? Don't handle it yourself. Don't stoop to their level by defending yourself against the bully. You call in the authorities. Don't grow up. Don't act responsible. Don't take on the responsibility of judging right and wrong and trying to make justice happen yourself. No, you just rely on the authority figures. They do that when kids are in school, and you can see it all over society among grown-ups. Well, don't take the law into your own hands. You dial 911 and let the police handle it. Even though they completely suck at it, and half the time they are the aggressors that people need to defend themselves from. So that entire mentality of, well, somebody else is going to have to do this, that government has trained into people, yeah, that would kind of be a problem for a while if government just fell into the ocean. Because a lot of places where people are used to calling 911, let the police handle it, which already doesn't work. There's a crappy track record of actually keeping people safe. But if they have the mentality of everything is somebody else's job, like if suddenly those other people aren't even there to do the crappy government job of those things, those people are going to have to learn how to grow up pretty quick. And that's how this ties into my talk, when humanity grows up. And you see some truly just despicable examples of the fall of humanity. Like there was a huge story years ago in New York where somebody was like screaming for help for like hours or something while getting stabbed to death, like within earshot of lots and lots of people, and nobody did anything. because the giant authoritarian centralized monstrosity that is New York trains people to be cowards who pay no attention to anything else. And, there's a lot of psychological stuff of a bunch of people being crammed into a city that isn't just government did that. But still, there are plenty of little towns where if somebody's screaming for help, there's going to be 10 armed neighbors running out their front door going, what, was somebody in trouble? Because they have the mentality that we are the grown-ups. It's up to us. And especially when people live more spread out, it's like we know damn well government isn't going to show up to do a goddamn thing. So we're going to do it or nobody's going to do it. And so they take on the mantle of responsibility of, okay, we're all there is. It's just people. And that's us. So that mentality, and if government just vanished tomorrow, like all the all the bureaucrats, all the tax collectors, all the free handouts for whether it's employees or recipients of government handouts, the cities would be a really good place to not stinking be, because so many of them are so much kept alive by this completely artificial sponging off of the productivity of others. Now, there's plenty of productive people in the cities, but that's also where the least productive people hang out, because rural country, middle of nowhere, it's a lot harder to be completely useless and get away with it. Now, welfare programs can hand out stolen loot to people all over the place, so it's not like it's impossible. It's not like it doesn't help at all. Happen at all. But I would say for the most part, there's way more child mentality, entitlement mentality, useless, helpless people in big cities than there are off in the country, because it's really difficult to live that way in the country. And in the cities where I get my food stamps and my welfare check and my public housing and my this and my that and my free education and free this and free that and the other thing, so I can just sit on my ass and get taken care of. That setting would get pretty bad pretty fast if government collapsed. Now, I actually don't think that would be that big a problem for very long. And this is predictions. You can predict differently. This doesn't particularly matter. But I think human beings have demonstrated that when things get really serious, they're pretty dang adaptive. I don't actually think there'd be millions of people starving in the cities. I think there'd be lots of people figuring out, there's a hell of a lot of people who are dependent on that system, and they're now screwed, and they don't know how to take care of themselves. And all they know is the office to go to get your free stolen loot from government. They're going to kind of be screwed. And some of the people will be like, well, screw them. They've been receiving money stolen from me their whole lives, so why the hell should I help them? But other people are going to go, yeah, I know, but we don't want them to starve to death. So I don't actually think there would be some long drawn out horrible starving to death scenario. But short term, there would very much be problems for a lot of people who have had the mentality of entitled, spoiled children their entire lives because government trained them to have that mentality. And authority figures in general, teachers, often parents, of course, the thugs of the state, law enforcement, and the media, training them to just be easily managed, stupid, helpless cattle. If they're suddenly thrown into a situation where they have to think and act like grown-ups, they're not going to be very good at it for a while. And some of them are going to resort to crime, actual crime, the kind with victims, not the crime of you sold a plant to somebody without the permission of politicians. But actual, I'm going to steal from other people. And I know a bunch of pro-freedom people who are scared that, if things collapse, it's going to be scary because all the people in the city are going to come out and try to rob everybody. No, they're not. First of all, the people in the city are not that comfortable in the country. I know, as a result of being in federal prison for not sending pieces of paper to the IRS, a lot of people there, it was up in it was Waymart, Pennsylvania. It was actually a very nice view if you're going to be in a cage, which sucked, but the view was nice. There's mountains and a pond and stuff. In the mountains of rural Pennsylvania. And a lot of people there were kind of scared shitless of their surroundings. And it's funny because at one point it was like, oh yeah, we heard that a bear's been sighted in town. Like, that happens like a lot all over the country. There are bears in this country, and it's just black bears there. But there were a bunch of guys there who grew up in the city, and they had never been outside the city until they were stuck in this prison in the mountains of Pennsylvania, and they were kind of scared shitless. So yeah, the people in the city are not that eager to run off to a completely unfamiliar area. And as soon as 2 or 3 of them get shot trying to break into, some farmhouse, because, oh yeah, you quickly find out that the people out there, they're armed. They don't dial 911 and sit on their butts. They frickin' shoot you if you come into their house at 2 a.m. So I think a lot of the dire predictions of there'll be waves of people, like in the Great Depression, that didn't even happen, even when it should have happened. Apparently, I can't all the way confirm this myself. Apparently, the populations of white-tailed deer in the country were higher than they had ever been before during the Great Depression. And you got millions of people huddled in the cities going, who's bringing us food? It's like there's more food out there walking around than there has ever been before in this country. And you're sitting here because your mentality is one of other people need to feed me. So sadly, that would still be the mentality of a lot of people. And then other people would have to go, are we going to take them food and stuff so they don't die? And I think a bunch of people would. So in the short term, yeah, people whose mentality hasn't grown up, they're going to be in deep shit for a while. And they're going to have to change their view of reality and change their behavior. The thing is, that just kind of happens when the consequences change. If the consequence of sitting on your ass is, oh, look, free food, free money, free housing, free this, you're going to learn to sit on your ass. If the consequence of sitting on your ass is, I got kicked out of my house, I have no money, I have no food, holy shit, I better do something. That will make people suddenly become responsible. And the ones who are like, well, I'm just going to go rob somebody, you may try and immediately get shot, because guess what? The cops aren't there to stop the other person from shooting you if you try to victimize them. Unlike right now, where you can watch tons and tons of videos of thugs and thieves barging into stores, and the cops won't do anything about it in some places. If it's under $1,000 in value, we're not even going to bother doing anything. But if you defend yourself, if you're the shop owner, and you beat the crap out of somebody or you shoot them to stop them from robbing you, we'll come after you. So you have the government being all the way 100% pro-theft, in addition to also being the biggest thieves around. But in a free society, that, the consequences are completely flipped around. And if you try to rob somebody and they shoot you, well, you're shit out of luck. Nobody's going to come to your defense. You were the thief. Screw you, dumbass. And the fact that right now government is enabling a scenario in which the thieves are protected and their victims are not, which is what government's doing just directly and openly in a lot of places, that dynamic would go away really damn fast if government wasn't there. If badge-wearing thugs of the state weren't literally taking the side of the thieves, those thieves are going to learn quickly. I mean, LA riots, the Koreans on rooftops with rifles, that whole story. Oh, gee whiz, they didn't get their shops broken into because they were up on their roofs with AR-15s telling anybody gets close, well, you can try to loot this place, but then we're going to kill you. Gee, what happened? They all went somewhere else where they wouldn't get shot. So the rest, in the absence of a government, the rest of the world would take a lesson from the rooftop Koreans in the LA riots who are like, screw you, we're not putting up with this crap. We work hard to have what we have, and we're not just letting you steal it because today it's fashionable to have a riot. So the dynamics and the consequences would change. But the thing is, in the long term, and not even a very long term, within a year, a hell of a lot of people, if government just vanished and all the welfare handouts and public housing just vanished, within a year, a hell of a lot of those people would have to learn, out of necessity, would have to learn how to act and think more like grown-ups. And so they would. So I think the guy's prediction that like a lot of people would suffer without government, short term, that's true because they're used to that and they were trained to be dependent on that. Long term, I don't think it's true. Now, there is one group that will suffer long term, and that is sociopaths. Because positions of authority, whether you're talking about an asshole with a badge or an asshole who we call congressman, sociopaths and psychopaths gravitate towards positions of power from which they can lord power over others and be sadistic bastards. Well, guess what? If there isn't that position and you go try to lord it over somebody else without a badge, they shoot you. And everybody around them goes, good job getting rid of that piece of crap. Right now, with the people believing in government, you got some sadistic asshole with a badge committing blatant murder, and he gets free room and board at worst, like, or best. The closest thing to justice is he gets free room and board in a prison paid for by money stolen from the people he victimized by the way of taxes, but way more likely he gets a paid vacation. He's on paid leave while we, the gang of thugs he's part of, look into it. And nobody dares to act out or do anything because it's like, well, we'll petition and we'll have a protest, but we don't nearly dare to go against this giant monstrosity because that individual evil piece of shit thug has this huge armed gang behind it that we don't dare to go against. So we just whine at them to please do justice, and they almost never do. Well, if you take that gang away, you take away government, you take that same individual and you take his badge away, and he goes out to be a sadistic bastard, bang, he's dead. Problem solved. That's the actual consequences and the cause and effect in a free society of someone being violently sadistic, is that someone will usually die pretty quickly or learn to not be violently sadistic. So the category of people who will in the long run absolutely lose out from a lack of government is sadistic sociopaths and psychopaths. And they should lose out. And they should be relegated to individual threats instead of authoritarian, legalized, giant gang of parasitic threats that nobody dares to resist because it's so huge. And the fact that you can, the Americans are like fascinated with serial killers. It's like, this guy killed 10 people. It's like, that's pretty freaking horrible. And sometimes sometimes there's more than that. He got away with that much before he got caught. Okay, first of all, he had to be sneaky. It wasn't on the news and then his fellow serial killers going, well, we're going to look into it and decide if he did anything wrong. It's like they have to be sneaky, and when they're caught, that's it for them. As opposed to cops and soldiers committing way more murders than 10 or 20, murdering huge numbers of people, including women and children on the other side of the world. And even when we know about it and somebody leaks, look, here's the video of members of the U.S. military murdering innocents, what happens? The guy who points it out gets put in a cage by the gang that he's exposing as evil psychos. If that gang wasn't there, you think everybody would hate the guy who points out, hey, these people are doing something evil? No, then all the decent people will go, well, holy crap. We might have to take up arms and go hunt those people down because they just murdered a bunch of innocent people. And we're not going to frickin' have that in our society. And so those people will absolutely lose out by the lack of a government. And a lot of them will frickin' die because there won't be a government to hide behind. And they should. And they should lose out. But as far as everybody else, including the huge number of people who've been trained to be mentally and emotionally and financially dependent on big mommy government or big daddy government or both, yeah, those people are going to have a tough time to begin with. But very quickly, the training they've accidentally received from this twisted, backwards, mangled, perverted society is going to flip the other way. And now, if you want to be rewarded, be productive. Be like helpful to other people. Be like a responsible adult. Not someone who is most rewarded for being the loudest whiner about what they need. So, yeah, short term, things would get ugly for a lot of people, and it needs to. Because those people need to learn that in reality, among free people who aren't being violently victimized, that state of existence would not and should not exist, where you're just sitting on your ass being a beneficiary of stuff stolen from somebody else. It is only government that trains people to think that that's okay, and trains people to think that they're entitled to more. We need more benefits and more free this and more free that. No, you need to grow the hell up and stop being recipients of stolen loot and learn how to be productive members of a society. And a lack of government would be the best way to make that happen, even if for a while it's really uncomfortable for the people who have been trained to be spoiled children. So, yeah, short term, the guy is sort of right in his comment. Long term, the only way in which he's right is psychopaths will lose out big time as a result of lack of a ruling class. Almost everybody else will be just fine, including people who actually need other people's help, because suddenly you free up a massive amount of wealth and all the other people are doing so well that it's well, now it's easy to help out the people who actually deserve help, and it's through no fault of their own they're in that situation. So yeah, I don't at all think it's, what a lot of people seem to assume, it's going to be Darwin's survival of the fittest, blah, 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 without a ruling class. No, it isn't. Because lots and lots and lots of productive people already care about helping the less fortunate. They still would. The difference is they wouldn't be getting robbed constantly, so they'd have way more prosperity to share with other people. And then there's the whole thing of how much less housing would cost, how much easier it would be to build housing for people and produce food for people without all these regulations forbidding this and that and the other thing. That's another topic. I've talked about that before anyway. So, yeehaw. Anyway, so that ties into humanity growing up, which is the subject of my talk for Anarchapulco next month. So the link below will show how to get tickets to be there. I shall be there. I will see some of you there. Yeehaw.